Lauren, how are you?
Hey.
Is Mike Fortuna on or no?
Yeah, I'm here, Bill.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Good.
All right. Well, welcome to the Mill Pond Pool Building Committee meeting. Needed to have one because it's already had a building committee in place, and we, need to make sure we have all the details before we decide if it's going back to council again. Lauren, can you throw up the agenda quick, please?
Just give me 1 second, because when I
Yeah.
did try to do it before, it lost. I lost control of the meeting.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to lose control of this meeting.
That's encouraging, John.
I was trying to keep my sense of humor. Many meetings the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. Budget time is tough.
And I don't have it on this machine to share, so.
Yeah. All right. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
I can only see please stand up.
Oh, boy.
I see please stand by.
Yep.
Yep. Hold on. Is it full screen on your computer though?
No,
No.
now we're back to the Brady Bunch screen.
Yeah. Well, John, you know what the agenda is, right? Roll call first and all that stuff.
I just want to make sure I don't want to misspeak. Not that I have been accused of misspeaking. All right, so I don't have it on this machine, or I would share it myself. I don't think I have it on this machine.
See.
But anyhow, do you want to just take roll call and we'll see if we can figure it out?
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Beauty. Okay, so we call the meeting to order at 6:07 PM on March 29th, 2023. I guess the roll call would be next.
Yep. When I say your name, please say here. Donahue,
Here.
Havens,
Here.
Woods,
Here.
Bashand,
Here.
Knowlton,
Here.
Botalico.
Here.
Okay.
All right. The band is back together.
Here.
So yeah, what we'd like to do is because I was going to use this as an informational meeting, but apparently some people were very upset. So we'd like to move section 5 up to public participation now instead of after we all get done talking about it, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So if that's okay with everybody, I think there's like 5 or 6 people in the room for public participation, and we can ask them to raise their hands and I can bring them in. I take it back.
Go for it.
Sounds good, John.
All right, there's 4 people in the room, so anybody in the waiting room who wants to speak, please raise your hand. And we will call on you. Except for that pesky guy, NCTV control room. We're not calling on him. Okay, Bernadette, you have your hand up? Can you hear us? Bernadette, can you hear us?
Is she muted?
No, it doesn't look that way.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I don't have any questions right now. I really just want to see the presentation. I'm sure I'll have questions afterwards. Will there be questions after the presentation as well?
Yeah, we'll have public participation at the end, but it's kind of out of sequence the way we're going to do it, but
Okay,
we'll certainly let people speak if they have an interest.
all right, thank you.
All right. Anybody else in the attendees window that would like to speak? Give it a minute. Dana Havens.
Hi, Dana Havens, 113 Stoddard. So I just want to start by saying Garrett and I have made an agreement that we don't talk about our committees. So that's why I have to come on here and ask you guys questions.
Probably a smart move.
Yeah. I'll tell you though, I give him dirty looks sometimes. But anyways, I have a question. Yeah, I just heard a little bit about adding parking, which was never mentioned before. But I had also seen, which was hard to find. I had to go to a town council meeting back August of 2021 or whatever. But your presentation from there, I couldn't find it on your site. But there's something there already about soft paved area for campers. Is that also like a parking area where they're just gonna like come in, drop off? Or what is that? Because it's, you know, pretty large to me, 2,500 square feet.
All right, well, when we get to comments by on public participation, we will answer that question, hopefully.
Okay, oh, that's right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Ms. Lyons. Oh, hang on, what happened here? There we go. I've never
Rose
been a
Lyons,
judge
46
before.
Elton Drive. It's pretty scary when everybody knows the last 4 digits of the phone number. And I didn't make any deals with Garrett or with Dana, so I don't know whether it was me, because I am having trouble with my eyes lately, but I went onto your agenda and I tried to get onto this meeting and they told me it was not a valid number. Then I went to the virtual meeting schedule and was able to get the right information. But I guess my main question is the presentation tonight. I hope I didn't miss it, seeing I'm 13 minutes into it. How it differs from what was given to the town council in August of 2021.
Inside.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
What happened?
Dana's
I don't know.
yelling
I
at
think I
somebody.
have Dana here, my
Oh,
twin.
somebody mute
on
me.
the
I
other-
can't. Oh, I can mute myself.
Doesn't
Don't you
Garrett
usually
know
do that,
to do
Gary?
that?
At least she's not yelling at me.
Yeah.
Continue,
All
Russ.
right, I'll. That's about all I needed to know. You know, and when you're giving the presentation, I wrote down everything that was in the 20 or 8/21/21 presentation as to what was being included, and I'm all confused between the phase 1s, the phase 2s. I'd like a breakdown of exactly what is included, if there's a phase 1 and a phase 2 still, or just a little bit of information to see what differs from a year and a half ago. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rose. Anybody else in the attendees window would like to speak? All right, I'll take that as a no. So we will, I guess we'll move on to the review of the master plan. I said this last night at the council meeting, and I'll just repeat it. When we did this in 2021, and the council wasn't in favor of moving it forward at that time, I tried to call another meeting of the committee, and the committee had stated that they didn't believe the council had the appetite for it, so we weren't going to meet again. That's how it was left, in my recollection. I don't,
You're correct, John.
okay, I just want to make sure, because my wife tells me I'm crazy all the time, so I just want to make sure that that's how it was. So, when this came back around, we have to go through it again. So let's, I did, Bill, sorry I spaced out and didn't send you the questions the first time I sent the email, but I did send the questions the second time. But we can ask those on the question. They may be covered in the master review. So let's.
I did not, just for the record, I did not open that email yet, so I didn't see it.
And I think I finally got around to sending it at 4:00. So it's like,
Okay.
So we'll play it by ear.
Yep.
So is Mike going to give us the master review of the plan?
He can. Are you prepared, Mike, to do that?
Or I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't know who was going to.
Yeah, no, I am. I could walk you through whatever you need to see. Because everybody has seen the master plan, what I really wanted to do tonight was address all of the concerns we heard in the council meeting, the previous building committee meetings, what we've heard for the last couple of years. And it really boiled down to the location in the park, obviously, is the big one, and parking, but also how we're addressing the groundwater and soils issues, the views in and out of the park, noise, and the impact on the neighbors. So what I'm hoping to do tonight is kind of share with you the thought process of how we got from where we started in 2017 to where we are today. So at least you understand how we got there. The other important thing to understand is that this is a very early planning stage. This is a conceptual design that came out of a master plan. It's been revised a couple of times. As we get more information on the site, things adjust, but there's an entire design phase to go. So it's not like we're asking you to, put a stamp of approval on this plan and go build it. There's a whole design phase, and there'll be public participation and additional presentations to council and this committee. So I don't want anybody to think that this is the final layout and design and that's it. No opportunities moving forward. So if I can share
Mike, if I could just jump in and share that the idea that the Parks and Recreation Board came up with years ago was the economy was bad, COVID hit, and they predicted that the federal government would come up with, all kinds of grant money, and the state would do the same if you had a shovel-ready project. So that's what stimulated what happened and where we were going with it. So go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yep. No, great. So let me share my screen. I'll walk you through. Some of this might be a little dry, but I think it's important to understand where the decisions came from. So what this map shows is an overlay of the entire park, and it identifies floodways, 100-year flood zone, 500-year flood zone, wetlands, upland review areas, rights of way, and private property. So, it's just kind of an overview of identifying areas that are buildable. So early on in the design process, we identified 5 potential locations within the park to build this pool. One of them was over here. That's not feasible without relocating soccer fields, which was not palatable. So we took that one off the table. One of them was over here, but that was riddled with a lot of issues, and there didn't seem to be much appetite for that anyway, because then you're forced to build a lot of additional program in phase 1 because you're displacing a lot of courts that are needed. So that went by the wayside. Another option was to build it in the general location of the existing pool. That is viable with the exception, a couple of exceptions. One is I'm not sure the fully functional program would fit between the wetlands and the right of way. So this big red stripe through the park is the MDC sewer right of way. So we have to stay out of that. The yellow is the upland review area. So with approvals, we can build in that zone, but there will be some regulatory hurdles, probably not insurmountable. Generally, in 100-foot upland review area, you can do some things, beyond 50 feet. Within 50 feet is pretty tough to get approval on. And then you could see the wetlands, the 500-year flood, the 100-year flood, and the floodway. So there's a lot going on in here. It's pretty tight to the pond because of the steep grades, whereas, some of the other areas where grades are a little flatter, the wetlands are further away from the stream bed in the pond. Excuse me. So the next area we looked at was near the playground. Plenty of room there, good access to parking. The biggest hurdle there, well, two hurdles. One was the groundwater. It's about 4 inches below grade. And I'll show you what that means to the construction and how you build within groundwater. The other was you'd now have a fairly large developed area in the middle of the park. It would impact the neighbors a lot more, both noise and views across the park. And it would also create a visual barrier. So if a parent had a young kid on the playground and another kid running around flying a kite or something, you can't keep an eye on both. You can't stay in the playground and keep an eye on the kid in the park. There's some security issues potentially with not being able to see the playgrounds from the open area. So, again, these are all surmountable, but in aggregate, it was not the ideal location. And then the fifth location was the much talked about location on Garfield. So what I'll show you tonight is are some diagrams and drawings showing that and how that decision was made and why we think that some of the concerns have been addressed and maybe just not presented clearly. So we'll walk through it. Again, all of these concerns we've been hearing are completely valid and need to be addressed. But I think we can do that with the development up in this area. So let me start with this map. So this is, I don't know that this is exactly what was built. This was the design drawing we received from the architect for that complex. It's not an as-built, so excuse me if some of the parking lines are not exactly right, but the crosswalks have been surveyed, so we know they're in the right place. So the thinking here was that we were taking advantage of this bend in Garfield, making the pool building an extension of the town hall complex and leaving the park as open as possible. And by eliminating the development along the pond, connected the pond back to the park, whereas right now it's bisected by the existing pool. So that was a big driver in the overall planning of the park. And by putting the constructed development on the edges of the park, it left the park proper as wide open as possible. It's the furthest away from the neighbors. There's this little sensory garden here, so putting the active development near the Audubon Avenue properties and the sensory garden increased noise, block some views. So that was part of the driver. But the real complexity of this site, aside from the construction phase and how you actually stage that construction in this area, was the groundwater. So if we look at the area near Garfield, these areas in the blue are where we have the monitoring wells. So water in this area is between 4 and 5 feet down. So the deeper end of the pool will still encounter it. But what's critical there is that groundwater line is below the frost line. And that's a major advantage to building in this area. As you get down to the playground area, groundwater is about 4 inches down. In the dead of summer, we read the well at 2 feet, but most of the year it's around 4 inches, 4 to 6 inches. So what that means is if we were in the Garfield Street site, our building is bearing at frost line. The majority of the pool is above the frost line. Only the hopper is down into the groundwater. So we have an opportunity to put in stone and under drains and keep all of the structure dry. There's an existing drainage storage tank on the site that discharges into the pond. It's meant to settle out any sediment or anything. So that's all in place. We would tie into that. We can keep our structure dry. When you move down to the playground site, groundwater is way up here. So the entire, excuse me, the entire foundation of the building, the entire swimming pool, and the bottom of the decks are in groundwater above the frost line. So we can certainly engineer this thing to be durable in that environment. But all of the pool pipes, all of the anchors for ladders and diving boards and climbing walls, all of that infrastructure is in groundwater within the frost plain. So it's going to be impacted by freeze thaw. We could put in all the stone in the world, but there's no place to drain it. So that stone's going to be in water all the time. And so that's why that was one of the major driving factors in ruling out this site and moving it north towards Garfield. From a technical standpoint, from a planning standpoint, we think there are a lot of advantages to the Garfield site in terms of keeping that active program and built infrastructure on the perimeter and opening up the main part of the park, reconnecting the pond to the open space, access to utilities, better sight lines for security, for monitoring it from Garfield Street, better connection to the camp programs across the street. But then that does drive the parking question. And so let me jump ahead a little bit here. So in the original master plan, you can see the pool. This is an older version. After we got the survey and mapped out the floodplains, everything shifted. But from a parking standpoint, there's about 63 spaces over here on Browning and Hillcrest. The town owns a small property at the corner where I think we can get another 10 or 12 in. They also own a little piece of property at the end of Brookdale where I think we can add some parking. The portion of the parking down by the soccer fields kind of is what it is. I think we can clean it up, formalize it, maybe yield 1 or 2 more in that area. And then there's the corner at the end of the stream by the Polish American Club, where I think we can get another little pocket parking lot and turnaround drop-off area and get another 10 or 12 in there. Some of these wouldn't make a lot of sense until you build the walkways. But once the walkways are in, these become viable areas for people to park and take some of the load off of parking in other areas. There's certainly human nature to park as close to the pool as possible. But what we do find in parks that we do, people are more than willing to walk 900 feet instead of 400 feet if it's a nice walk in a park. So I think this will certainly help. It doesn't solve the problem. So we looked at, and I think this is what Bill was alluding to earlier with some additional parking on Garfield. So in the original design plans for the complex, there were some parking alternates that were not accepted. I think those are maybe still in play to get some additional parking over by the library. And then there's a couple of grass areas on the other side of the rec center where I think you can yield in total maybe another 30 to 40 spots there. And then there's been some discussion of widening Garfield to add parallel parking along the street from about where that crosswalk to, is it Mazzicoli Way? To where the existing backstop is and get another 10 or 12 in there. So I think there's opportunities to address parking. They weren't currently contemplated in phase one, but they certainly can be. And then, that coupled with, some better pedestrian walks to make it nice for families to actually walk through the park to get to the pool. I think that could relieve some of the pressure. I think Bill spoke at the council meeting last year about some of the scheduling, some of the ways that scheduling can alleviate this too, with the summer programs, camp programs not needing the parking during the week and the pool having the heaviest use on the weekend when town hall is closed. So I think in combination, all of those things could relieve the pressure on the parking. So, and jump in anybody, and I'm kind of going from one issue to the other, but I'm happy to stop and stay on any one issue if you'd like. The other topic that came up a couple of times was views of the open space. So I don't know if you remember at this committee meeting last year, we had a couple of videos driving up and down Garfield to kind of show how, as you're approaching from the east heading west, the bend in the street kind of, you have a full view of the park till you get to about the crosswalk. And then as that road bends back, you don't really have a view of the park now, even because of those large trees and the natural bend in the road. And it's kind of the same thing heading east, where you have a view once you clear the bus yard. You have a view of a portion of the pond, and then it sort of disappears as you get up the hill and then reappears. So locating the building in this area doesn't really affect the sightlines from the street in a car. So then we looked at what the views were like from the crosswalks. So this is the further east crosswalk, the Mazzicoli Way, closest to the library. I think we actually pulled that view out. So this is, if you're in the crosswalk coming across the street, the building is to the right in sort of the belly of Garfield. You're looking through the site to the newly cleared out pond area, so you can see the pond beyond, and then all the way to the tree line by the residential properties to the east. As you get over to the other crosswalk, that comes into the kind of service drive. Same thing, you're looking through the site to the pond beyond. The building is off to the left. And then as if you were to walk, we've got a sidewalk running around. As you're approaching the building, the park's opening up to you again. So the building was carefully located to avoid obscuring the park from any of the major pedestrian walkways. As far as views from town hall itself, there's windows in the rec center, where Bill's office is. There's a couple of program rooms. There are some windows there, but they're at a lower level. There are no windows from town hall itself looking towards the park because they're obscured by the gym. And the library will have the same view as they have now, just cleaned up. That 4-foot fence for the baseball field would go away. So we have some 4-foot fence at the splash pad and soft paved area, but that's stops short of where the current baseball fence goes.
This is Phil. Quick question on those two areas with the fence, and this might be, and tell me if this is a question for Parks and Rec Commission or for Bill, outside of this, but accessibility to the soft play area and to the splash pad after quote unquote Parks and Rec hours are over, yet it would still be, say, daylight hours, or would those be accessible to the public if the weather was good, daylight hours outside of, say all the workers at Parks and Rec had to go home. Would the splash pad continue on or I'm just trying to understand like how much access the, folks will have to those two areas.
You want me to answer that, Mike?
Sure.
So I think one of the public participation, and for those of you who don't remember, the soft place area is required by the state of Connecticut for any preschool. So under the Department of Early Childhood, as you saw, I built a temporary playground for the preschool kids. We have 45 families there now every day from 7:30 in the morning till 6 o'clock, 5:30. And what the kids do is they walk across the street, and someone asked, why is it 2,500 square feet? The state of Connecticut has a 35 square foot per child to use it. And it has to be fenced in if you can see a body of water. So I did everything in my power to keep the preschool to be able to allow it to move from the church over to the new community center. And that was what was the accepted plan by the state. And I told them at the time, it's probably going to be fairly temporary over a period of years. And we would add a soft play structure, a soft playground that's so kids don't bruise themselves or get hurt with the pool if it ever came to fruition. So that was why we did that. The splash pad, I foresee the splash pad being open dawn to dusk, April 1st to October 31st, and it's going to be on a ballard that is computerized. So you would touch it. We wouldn't waste any water if no one was there, but yet they could come and use it 7 days a week. So I hope that answers the question there.
And the splash, sorry, just on the one more point on the splash pad. You had a staffing question in there, after Park and Rec staff goes home. That bollard not only is an activation bollard, but there's a controller with a timer. So you could pick your time of day, and at 7 o'clock, you can go in there and touch the bollard. Nothing's going to happen. So you don't necessarily need to have staff come and close it per se.
Right. And the beauty part about a splash pad is that we don't have to staff it by law. And we have an environmental concern. So we thought about this, and we've done this in my other former jobs. By state health code, you have to take a hot soap shower if you recycle water. So during the time the pool would be open, we would use the showers and soap and recycle the water. And we call them the shoulder months, April to June and August to October are the other shoulder months, wrapped around, the middle is the pool season. We would then put the water at gray water and use it to water the turf, the natural grass in the park, or flowers, or the roof buildings, or whatever. So we would do everything in our power to be very environmentally conscious.
Thanks, Bill.
And so,
Hang on, Mike. I believe our mayor has a question.
oh, sure.
Hi, everyone. This kind of goes back a few slides when you were talking about the groundwater levels.
Mhm.
You mentioned the playground level, and you mentioned by Garfield Street, but you also mentioned that it might be possible to put the pool where it is. What's the groundwater level where the pool currently is?
We don't have a monitoring well in that area, but I would suspect it's just judging by the profile we're seeing in the borings and the groundwater wells we do have. I would guess it's above the frost line, but probably not 6 or 8 inches, probably a couple of feet, because some of that groundwater on that bank of the pond is probably leaking off into the pond and lowering that level a bit. We could judge a little bit and be pretty accurate in the pool area when you drain the pool and then it sort of naturally fills up again. through the hydrostatic relief and cracks and everything else, that sort of stable level that it stops rising is probably within inches of groundwater.
Okay.
So we could probably find that out without deploying a rig to install a well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. If you want to continue.
All right, so let me just go. So the master plan, just the overall master plan. Again, this is the second revision that shows the current proposed pool. And again, this is not carved in stone. This is for discussion and the sort of jumping off point for if you decide you want to put it up to Garfield. This is your jumping off point. If you decide you want to put it somewhere else, then, that's the jumping off point. But again, I think this addresses the constructability, the long-term durability. It keeps it as far away from the neighbors as possible. And again, is taking advantage of the more built up Garfield Street development as opposed to putting it back in the park itself. So if you look at what ends up being kind of the open park, it's this kind of kidney shape that wraps around the pool into the pond area behind the playground. You've got plenty of room for ultimate frisbee or a half football field or soccer or whatever you decide to do there. But it leaves a big, large open space. If we put the pool area back here, that pushes all that out into the belly where it gets a little harder to program and puts all those activities nearer the street. But from my mind, in a park planning perspective, you really try and limit that sort of active park program along a busy street, and use your buildings and fences as your buffer to the street.
In the facade, Mike, you kind of recommended that it would match the town hall in the community center.
Right. So one of the advantages of having this design span the time period it did is we got to see the final product across the street. So, we reacted to the construction over there in terms of materials and forms. We've got the sloped roof facing south for the solar panels. And then on the flat roofs, we've introduced some green roofs to be more sympathetic to the park environment. So architecturally, we would complement what's happening across the street. This is a much smaller scale. I mean, if you look at the plan, where do I have? This is probably the best place to see it. If you look at the scale of this bathhouse building, it's about the size of, the one-story portion of the rec center. So, it's not a large building. Just comparatively to what you've got going on across the street.
What is all in that building? The Mill Pond building. I mean, it looks pretty big for just a place to take a shower and
concession stands.
You've got a small entry area, to check the residency and tickets and whatnot. And then we've got the family changing rooms so that you have the opportunity for, mothers with sons or fathers with daughters or people with special needs. So we've got a few of those. And then the traditional locker rooms. And then a big portion of it is the filter plant for the splash pad and the pool. There's a concession building on the end to service this end of the park. And then storage. So I think the building itself is, sorry, bear with me. I don't know, I think it was like 4,000 square feet. And there's certainly opportunities to trim that a little bit, but.
And I think there's also, you may add that it's just slightly bigger than the existing pool house because of you need more space for ADA accessibility for toilets and facilities. And then it's also driven by having the accurate amount of urinals and toilets in each of the locker rooms that's by state building
Right.
code. Yeah.
Yeah, so the number of showers and fixtures is driven by the surface area of the pool. So, you know, the locker rooms are based on the occupant load of the pool. The special needs or family changing rooms or unisex rooms, or whatever you want to call them, they're just a shower, toilet, and sink. And the way the building is laid out, in those shoulder months that Bill talked about, when the splash pad's open but the pool is closed, you can close off the rest of the building and still have access to a couple of toilet rooms. So you'd come into the main building and there'd be a direct access to the splash pad. And you can shut down the rest of the building. So you don't need to keep it open. You don't have to worry about kids wandering through. And so there's, in addition to the accessibility requirements that, you know, drive things a little bigger. And actually we just had a code update in October of last year where the forever 5-foot turning radius for a wheelchair is now increased to 5'7", because wheelchairs are getting bigger and bigger. So all of that's accommodated to make sure that you've got adequate space for accessibility, but also the program enhancements. The existing building doesn't really have a lifeguard room and first aid room. That's kind of up to snuff. The filter room is a little bit tight. The concession's a separate building over there. And then there's really the storage and filters kind of share a space. So what you have currently is not optimal. And this one gives you everything you need for not just code compliance and health department compliance and ADA compliance, but the spaces you need to operate a pool. You know, the storage to get stuff off the deck, the lifeguard space so that lifeguards can get out of the sun between shifts. First aid is a health department requirement. So all of that's incorporated.
Mike, J.B. Calico, I'd like to jump in and address Beth's concern about putting the pool back in the same area beside the back pressure from the pond. We looked at that. What would happen there, Beth, is you'd be 2 years without a pool. Is that correct? Mike, that the new pool build is about 2 years that you'd be out of pool.
You'd be out certainly 1 year. And depending on weather, sometimes we see part of a second year.
Okay.
This is, if you build it over there in that groundwater, the regulatory requirements to dewater are going to be significant, because when the construction is complete, you can let the groundwater recharge, but during construction, you got to get that groundwater down, which means the pond is going down with it. So that's going to extend the construction period significantly and really complicate the permitting, because groundwater discharge comes with a lot of requirements. You know, again, and I'm not saying we can't do any of this. We certainly can. But if cost is an issue and long-term durability is an issue, you're much better off bearing as much of your structure above the groundwater than you are putting it in groundwater.
Well,
I have a couple
Mike,
questions,
yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to address that because basically it'd be the same problem in the existing pool today.
Well, yeah, except we have better technologies today, so we can handle it better than they were able to 60 years ago.
Right.
And it lasted 60 years.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions, Mr. Chairman.
John, you're muted.
I'm not used to being in charge. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, John.
For the representative, can you give us a comparison on the square footage of the two buildings, the existing and the proposed?
Yes. So the existing building is 2,610. The proposed is 4,700.
Couple thousand feet more.
Yeah.
And I had a couple more, are you done with your presentation?
Yeah,
To me,
I mean,
it seems like we're putting the cart in front of the horse if we haven't decided on the location. So in my opinion, the location proposed now by Garfield Street is a deal killer for me. I would like to see that. To me, it's the maximum amount of fragmentation of the open space of the park. And I would like to see that left stay open. One day I would love to see Garfield Street cleaned up, get rid of the buses, and it'll be even nicer. But I don't think moving the pool there is, I just can't, so far I can't accept it. So either my opinion, either in the existing location or up next to the playground. As far as the groundwater goes, I'm a little perplexed here because we have major stormwater infrastructure that runs right through the park. Right on the other side of the playground, there's a major stormwater infrastructure that I believe, I didn't do the engineering on it, but I believe it's below the frost line. For the area planned or the proposed or the possible location next to the playground. There's major infrastructure that goes east and west from the center of town, comes into the park in a 3-foot in diameter pipe. So I'm a little perplexed by that.
I might,
4 inches of groundwater could easily be overcome, in my opinion. So. But again, I think we're putting the cart in front of the horse, talking about amenities of the building before we identify the location. I'm glad to hear that at least there's some still consideration of other locations, but that spot is just a deal killer for me.
so please don't take this as argumentative, but I would ask you how we're fragmenting the open space more by placing it near Garfield Street than we would be if we were placing it essentially in the middle of the park.
Well, it would be right next, it's either be in the present location where it is now, leaving the entire open space open, or it would be right next to the playground, which would be not fragmenting it. It would be next to what's already built. So that whole open space towards the front, towards the road would remain open. And yeah.
Right, but if you consider the land up to the pond as viable open space, wouldn't it be nice to have park space year round with access to the pond?
Sure. I mean, if you build the pool next to the playground, then that could still happen. I mean, you're talking about building the so-called music or band shell or whatever. I mean, there's not much elevation relief there. It's not going to be like the New Britain band shell, but you could put a stage there, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you put the footprint near the playground would extend all the way to the middle of the field. I think you're saying, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, if it goes over near the playground, if you bear with me 1 second, if it goes near the playground, it'll be a different design for sure.
Yeah.
But just in terms of scale, I guess you would leave the soft play area near the camp, but
I mean, that's just my opinion. So I respect everyone else's opinion, but that one for me is it's a deal killer. I said that from the beginning.
And John, just so you know, when Gary Furstenberg left, that pipe that's behind the playground is failing. So it's like $1 million drainage project that Gary's always been talking about for 8 years with me, or a little less, 7 years. And so I'm not positive I wouldn't rely too much on that pipe.
There is a drainage, that drainage basin that I referred to earlier is a little bit, it's north of the current baseball field. Mm-hmm. That's the one that I envision if if the pool's up here, we can easily tie into the inverts, work out fine.
Hmm.
If we're down here, by the time we get there, you're always going to be flooded there. You're never going to be able to drop groundwater below the frost line using any existing infrastructure. And the water level in the ponds at about elevation 72. So you try to make a beeline to get to there, but if the groundwater is coming up constantly, I don't know that you're ever going to overcome that. So we'd have to engineer the building to exist in that groundwater.
Just want to add that the infrastructure work Bill and I are talking about is south of the playground. You know, you may not see it on your plan there, and it's a major conduit that comes from the center of town. So if it was failing, we'd have to fix it anyway, but
Yeah,
it's,
that's this line.
Yeah.
That runs
Yeah,
through here.
the other thing is all our special events, as you know, John, near that sensory garden and playground, it's just soaking wet. We really can't do much there with the very smallest rain. So you're talking about a high, very, very high water table over there.
I understand, but we're talking about a multi-million-dollar project that I think would easily drain it. Like I said,
Well,
if we saw the elevations of that existing conduit and then compared that to the footings or to the frost line, I would be curious to see if I suspect it's lower than the frost line.
It is lower. It is lower, but the groundwater is going to continuously recharge. We're never going to be able to flow it by gravity enough to overcome the recharge of that groundwater.
And to over engineer an existing problem, you know, where the existing pool is now, we use the terminology in my other job is over engineering it to keep the water away. I mean, I think off the top of my head, we're talking $500,000 or more, maybe $1 million to add to the cost, right? Am I wrong there?
I don't know. I don't want to hazard a guess on that until it's engineered, but
Okay.
you know, it's stone and pipe. So it's not, it's the complexity during construction to de-water that much water, and get the permits to do that.
And we are in the 100-foot buffer, right?
Not over by the playground, we're not.
No, the existing pool was.
Yeah, the existing
like
pool
three-quarters
is,
of it.
yeah, the existing pool is, that yellow is the buffer. Green is a wetland.
Again, I just wanted to speak my piece. I think that is the pressing matter, though, is we have to decide on the location before we start talking about amenities and shower stalls and everything else, in my opinion.
Well, I think it goes hand in hand because, you know,
Hey,
you
guys,
mentioned,
can-
we were talking about the
Bill?
4,000 square foot. And if there's room to carve back that 4,000 square foot to make the building a little smaller, then, you know, then it helps on the footprint too. And so I was interested when he was, you know, I was going to ask questions about the inside of that building, just to basically ask, you know, what's a nice to have and what's a need to have on that building.
I
Bill,
agree, but that would be wherever it's going. I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, we got it. If you guys gotta use the raise your hand function. So we
I'm sorry.
Don't get out
Sorry.
of control. Don, you had your hand up?
Yeah, John, thank you. Honestly, listening to Mike's presentation, I have not heard a single thing other than maybe a preference where somebody might like the pool that would justify making a decision to move the pool other than the Garfield Street. We've had this conversation, I don't even know how many times. Back in May, we actually moved it on the vote to move it to Garfield Street. The council turned it down for sure. So unless someone can tell me real reasons other than I don't like it, and no offense to you, John, you're entitled to your opinion, it just doesn't make sense. The pool guy is telling you where to put it. The Parks and Rec department is telling you where the best functionality is, where to put it. Why are we talking about it? I don't get it. That's all I have to say. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Mary Beth?
So I guess I would, and I have not been quiet about this at any meeting yet. I do not like the Garfield Street location. I do have to look out for not just Parks and Rec interest in programming, but for the entire town. I've had a number of people approach me and say that they fought to keep that area open from a community center years ago. Why would we now consider putting a different structure there, whether it be smaller, bigger, or otherwise? I've had people say to me, especially the library folk, come out and say that that parking lot is their parking lot that they paid for, at least the top portion of it. And they are extremely concerned about the impact of parking. And I know I heard some possible solutions or additions of parking, but I will tell you, I am extremely skeptical to think that any parking at the other end of the park is going to somehow help this project. People are going to park where they can closest to the pool, and nobody's going to convince me otherwise. I'm guilty of the same. And in terms of, I guess when Don asks, why are we even still talking about this? I think part of the problem is that if the council did say that they don't think it belongs near Garfield Street, however we want to word it, we have to consider other options. And the only way to consider those other options isn't just whether or not it can be done, but what is the cost? It's hard to say if it's going to cost $300,000 more, but to put it in a place that more folks are in favor of, then maybe that makes sense versus spending a little bit less, but putting it in a place that perhaps the community is not going to be happy with as a whole. So I think until we get some numbers attached to these ideas and really viable plans to at least consider it, we can sit here and argue about the groundwater, the frost line, but if it is viable, I know when we built Town Hall just a few years back, the basement is well below, and there were huge concerns for the groundwater, the water table, and flooding and that kind of thing. And we were told adamantly that it could be done, it would be done. You could build it with a membrane, you could do, lots of other things to make sure that it was viable. And I guess I'm just looking, I'm not an expert in this, I don't know, but what are the solutions for building a pool in a different area? If we look at the existing pool area or the playground area, I agree with John Bashan. I think this makes two areas of our park built up versus keeping it all down one end and then having one whole end that's open and green. So, those are the things that I'm looking at. And I'm sharing with you the concerns I've had from residents that I have to consider also. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Garrett?
Thank you, John. If we were to build it where the tennis courts are now, I mean, how long would the tennis court, where could we relocate the tennis courts if we were to do so? Because it always seems during the summertime that the tennis courts at the high school are vastly underused. And if we were to rescale the size of the pool, we could still fit it in the original location. I mean, like the designer said, in the last 60 years, we have better technology. And as Mayor Beth said, if it costs an extra 500,000, $1 million, what have you, put it where it is now and remediate the groundwater. That way you're not going to end up with the same problems you have now. Thank you.
Bill, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to listen to what Garrett had to say. I view Garfield Street, that portion of it, since the renovations to the police department, to the new community center and town hall. It's, I have kids from, 18 months all the way up to 22. And
God love you, Phil.
Yeah. we view that area, that lower area, almost as a municipal, not just municipal, but a community area. And so when I view it in, and I know it's just my opinion, but we go to the Thursday night library events for family reading night, and other library events as well. And we find a parking spot, and I feel as though, perhaps right now, the municipal parking spots, we need to look at what's being used efficiently, because when you keep these buildings to the outskirts, you walk into the park and you have that big open area. And Mill Pond Park, Mill Pond itself, in my opinion, should be what we're all looking at. I feel as though we're worried about this building, but what we should also look at is what can Mill Pond be? Right now, unfortunately, I hear people walk their dogs and they don't pick up around it. I'm hoping that if we move the pool away from there, we move that ugly fencing around that pool away from the pond, we can start to enjoy that park. Right now, what I enjoy with bringing my kids is the playscape area, the library, the town hall when I need to use it. But that general field area, it's good for some sports when it's dry. But I think there's a lot of enjoyment that, mental health enjoyment that could be, if that pool and that building is moved away from the pond. So I prefer to have it on Garfield. I hope that we can find some sort of way to improve parking. My second favorite on that was next to the playscape area, but I like what Garrett mentioned as well. And then finally, I don't like the playscape area because there is housing up there, and I would not want that in my backyard. I feel as though if Garfield's more of a municipal area, put it over there so that the Parks and Rec also can use it for their programming. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. I had a couple of concerns, Bill, and they may have been in the list of questions that I sent you, but I can't remember because I can't seem to find it. We're looking at putting this pretty good footprint over on Garfield Street. All right. And then, the extravaganza is going to come in. You're going to put the carnival somewhere. And then towards the playground side, you have, your beer garden, your big tent, and your stage. Where the hell are people going to sit for the extravaganza?
Well, I think we took the footprint of the extravaganza and placed it in the park. So, just so we're clear, I was predominantly the guy that started in 1981, the extravaganza. So I'm going to be the last guy in the whole world to put an end to the extravaganza, right? I love that thing. So I think we still can fit it. And then when we demolish the existing bathhouse and pool, it adds quite a bit of lawn space there too, to watch the fireworks. And if that's what you mean, and also have picnic tables and that kind of thing in that area.
All right. I guess the other question I've had, and I've got this from a number of people, counselors as well as people on the street, is, I mean, the pools are 2.5 miles apart.
Yep.
It's a major ordeal to go 2.5 miles. But, as soon as we touch Mill Pond, Churchill's going to come up. All right. We're going to spend X number of dollars. Is there a total vision and dollar amount for the aquatics program? Can't we just build a pool at Mill Pond and put a splash pad at Churchill, or vice versa?
Yeah, John. Yeah, some people have been speaking for me at different meetings, and I'll try to correct or clear the air with everyone. Someone said that I was going to come back and ask for $20 million for Churchill Park at a later date. I just want to go on the record by saying this. 8 years ago, when I started on July 1st, Jeff Barron came to me and said, we have hired McBroom and McBride to do a master plan of Churchill Park. Your job is to finish this in 3 months and present it to the council. I said, fine, I can design parks. I have no problem with that. And I did it. I did it at the best way I could, putting in some amenities that took a beating on Facebook, the lazy river ride and all that kind of stuff. However, things have changed. And I'm going to tell you straight out, and you can check with all your legislators. The Parks and Recreation Board voted a couple months ago to give me full authority to fight against the state of Connecticut having municipalities not be exempt from summer camps. So with my Connecticut Recreation and Parks Association, Hadil Majdow in our office, Don Woods in Aruba, and myself spoke against licensing it. This would make it equal to our preschool program. And it's a problem. Let's just put it that way. There's going to be all kinds of municipal parks and recreation departments closing their summer doors and summer camp programs. Now, my best guess is that it's not going to pass this year, but it's not going to go away. It's going to pass eventually. What that means for Parks and Recreation in Newington is that they'd have to not use Churchill Park for summer camp for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And they'd have to probably use the community center, and we'd probably have to put a tent on the south side of the pond using near the soccer fields and put picnic tables, etc. So in my mind, Churchill Park's going to fall apart too. The pool is just a few years older than Mill. The concretes in the drainage system is on borrowed time. We struggle to keep the wading pool open. So, and we spend $30,000 to $60,000 to $100,000 every spring trying to keep Churchill and Mill Pond open with crack repairs and pipe repairs, filtration parts, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not a proponent of building Churchill Pool. I think in the long run, it's going to fall apart and close. It's 26 feet higher than the parking lot. It's going to be as expensive. The reason why it came to $19 million 8 years ago is because to make it ADA accessible was going to be almost impossible. I do totally agree with you, John, about putting a splash pad at Churchill eventually down the road. And that's because we have probably 17,000 picnickers on the weekends in the 3 pavilions, and grandparents bring their grandchildren or whatever, and it would be a nice place to cool off. But as far as the daily swim lessons and that stuff, I agree with you. It's 2.5 miles away. You could make the pool have enough linear footage so I could program swim lessons all around the edge of this existing pool at Mill. Then I would have to use our staff, and we would program. Bunch of kids would be at the pool for swim lessons. Bunch of kids would go to the splash pad, and a bunch of kids would be in 2 gymnasiums in air conditioning in the summer. So we would organize it to take care of, the kids from summer camp, as well as those in the public that want to use it. People from Newington don't go to Rocky Hill and Weathersfield to swim. And I can tell you this, Weathersfield and Rocky Hill people don't come to swim at Churchill and Mill Pond. That's just not a fact. It's a fact. As far as using state money and bond money, there's no requirements on residency and non-residency. I can tell you this, you can't buy a family pool pass or an individual pass without being a Newington resident. We're so conscious of Newington taxpayers. But by federal law, you can only double the price of out-of-towners coming to your facilities. And that's for any facility. That's not just pools. So I'm in full agreement that I think we start to, you make Mill Pond Pool before the 2 pools collapse, come up with another, a solution. Everybody said parking was a solution. We're offering you 60 more parking spaces. And those on Garfield Street and on the town hall is very inexpensive to do. And we've solved the problem. So really the parking problem's not going to be the issue anymore. The solution is there, and we can make that part of the program. So if you take that out of it, and then you take out that it's great to build scientifically by structural engineers, by engineers, and by architects, it makes good sense. To putting it in front of the playground, I know all those neighbors on Audubon, they are not going to like their pond being interrupted by their visuals from their backyard. So that's for sure. If we go through the existing spot, we can come up with a price for that, certainly. And it's just going to take longer. And in our business, in the Parks and Recreation business, I think Mike mentioned it, or Jade mentioned it, you don't normally close a pool and have all the elected officials take a beating from parents and people that use the pool. 22,000 visits at Mill in 8 weeks, 22,000 visits at Churchill in 8 weeks. That's going to be a lot of complaints. So if you close for 1 year, and Mike's optimistic, right? We built Willowbrook Pool and it took 1.5 years. We said we were going to open in June. Wasn't the case. So let's call it 2 summers. 2 summers of summer camps, kids not having a pool to cool off, and the pool being closed for families on nights and weekends. I wouldn't recommend that to my friends. But those are some of the answers I got you for there, John.
All right, thank you. Beth?
And
Mary Beth?
let me clarify one other thing. That flyer that went out, we don't know who sent that out. It was nobody from Parks and Recreation. The facts
Oh,
were not true, and the flyer looks like the same kind of flyer that someone else did.
That's why no one signed it either.
Yeah. So I just want to be clear on that.
Well,
Also,
we knew it didn't come from you, Bill. We could rest assured that that wasn't the case.
It
And
wasn't me. It wasn't me either, Bill.
We have a pretty good idea who it might have come from, but
yeah, I do too.
and
Yeah, I do too.
request is if you send something to town council, please sign it so we can get back to you.
Right.
Right.
Or if you send it to the pool committee, yeah, please do.
Yeah,
Not just town council.
Oh, it went to a lot of people. I don't know how many stamps he had, but Mary Beth. Did you have your hand up?
I guess I would say, I know you all have mentioned a few times the residents on the side street of the park. I'm not coming up with the name right away. But there are some houses on Garfield that I have personally taken complaints from regarding the noise from the park when we use the PA systems and whatnot. So like when there are events in the park, the folks on Garfield that have homes have complained. So I have no doubt the pool being closer and the noise level, I'm sure I would get some more complaints about that too. So I think we have to consider both sides of the park in that regard. And then in terms of the parking piece, Bill, when we're talking about that, one of the first slides, there were those alt parking spots from the town hall project. Those were not made parking spaces for a reason. And I can't speak to why. My recollection is that it may have been due to snow removal needs or something else, but I really couldn't say that for sure. But we've been asking for more parking since the inception of town hall. So those spots weren't used for a reason. Have we vetted those as possibilities?
That was valued engineering under the decision making that was going on. That was just to save nickels. I'm in charge of plowing the government center, so we know about plowing and sanding. So that was just, I think, one of those cuts that was made to get it down to a number they were looking for.
And
Okay,
it could also be, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but it could also be gravel overflow that you don't plow in the winter.
Yep. That's
Okay.
that's true. You mean
I
on
don't
Garfield
recall.
Street? Yeah.
I don't recall that because I remember having lots of conversations about trying to find spots for parking. So I guess we would have to run that through. I don't know who would even vet that for us, perhaps engineering. We do have a new engineer hopefully coming on board soon. There's a conditional offer out, so we'll see. But if we get somebody on board soon, we can certainly have them look at that.
Yeah, we have Gary Furstenberg's plan before he left of parking right on extending the town hall community center parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Is it? All right, I'll raise my hand.
Sorry, Phil. Okay, Phil, thank you.
Hi, is there any further opportunities down near the bus area for parking? I remember a few years back, I know police department does a great job for us. But there was an impound lot, sort of, I don't know if it's the impound lot, but it's where the crashed cars, sometimes you see are coming out of there. Is there any opportunity to, move that or is it just interdepartmental issues with the bus, Board of Ed and such? I'm just a, tax-paying citizen, so I'm not trying to step on any toes, but sometimes I see some space down there that I wonder if that could be used for parking.
One of the issues with Garfield Street is if we get into touching Garfield Street and the place around the bus garage, we open up an environmental can of worms because of the past oil spill. If we can mill and pave that road, but if we ever decide to dig it up, we got to remediate the stuff that's under there. So that's, it once again, it can be done, it's just dollars, right? But it's probably a reason that, we haven't done anything since we took down the building.
Thank you.
They have been, the Board of Ed has been cooperative as far as when there's at nights and weekends to park in the whatever available space there is there, Phil, if that helps you.
Yeah, they go over to the high school in the snow.
Yeah, and Chief Clark is very cooperative. There's no interdepartmental, I don't think, problem.
Because it's important to me that, quite honestly, and I'm just saying this from the heart, that if there's any way we can prevent putting this in people's backyards and putting it closer to where the municipal areas are, then you're not going to have as much concern for the noise. And I know it's a delicate balance, but I just want to make sure that everything's being looked at.
And the pools close at 8 o'clock and the concerts go till 10, or, fireworks go till 10. So, there's a certain amount of noise. And you're only talking, I forgot the bathing load, Mike, Fortuna. Is it like 400 or is it
460?
460. Yeah. So, and that's the maximum amount of people that can be in there at one time.
Maybe the noise is just Bill. It's your voice. It's annoying people. I don't know. Maybe that's it.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree.
All right. So, I understand everybody's perspective. I might be off on a tangent here, but if we could, and Mike, I don't know how much of a problem this is or how big of a challenge this is, but we have a price to build over by
Garfield.
Garfield, thank you.
Garfield.
Only said it about 1,700 times. Could we get a price to, for engineering by the playground and by the existing pool? I don't know how much work that is.
Yeah, I think, yes, I can get you that. I do think engineering it and coming up with a solution to solve the groundwater problem near the playground it's not a real heavy lift. I mean, the technologies are available. If there's piped infrastructure in the area, that certainly helps, so you're not going to outfalls. So I think we can come up with a solution. I think the broader issue ought to be the overall park planning more so than the technical aspects of constructing it. I don't think that putting it in the same location is something that you really want to spend too much time pursuing, because there's going to be so many challenges to putting it, because this MDC right away is not going anywhere, and this floodway is not going anywhere. And one of the requirements of the floodway is that whatever we do outside the floodway, we can't raise the elevation or the velocity of the water in a flood event, which is going to be virtually impossible to do if you're that close to the edge of the pond. So I think you'd go down this path only to find out there are too many hurdles. And
understand where we're coming from as a committee, and the eventual people that are going to get beat up for this process, right? If you say, we looked at this building site, it can be done, but it's going to be $2 million to do it there, right? That says to me, well, is it worth $2 million to put it there?
Yeah.
Putting it next to the playground, if it's $500,000 more, it might be worth it, right?
Yeah, I think we can come up with that delta near the playground. I think in a preliminary analysis, this site near the ponds can be much more challenging.
Well,
so we'd have to go to the land use boards in town and even see if they'll entertain doing that work in that upland review area, just as step one.
If we have the answers to the questions that we're going to get asked by our constituents and town people, to say, hey, we looked at it. It's not feasible. It's not feasible because of this, it's not feasible because of that, and it's going to cost X number of dollars, and you're going to lose a pool for 2 summers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or we could just move swimming lessons back to the pond, Bill. That's,
I did take them there.
I've been in the pond. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
So I think that, that'll take, I can't say that it's going to take all the angst out of it, but it will definitely, say, okay, these are the options.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And listen, I just have to tell you I got the, Save Mill Pond people calling me already. I don't need the aggravation. I got a lot of stuff already to do. But if we
Now,
have
let me
that-
just, John, just for to clarification, all I remember is that Save Mill Pond was when they wanted to put the pool in the community center on the soccer fields on Willard Avenue. Is that
Right.
correct?
but there was
That-
also, there was also a
That's
preliminary plan to put it here, right?
No,
No,
I don't think so.
never.
never. There was plenty of people that said there was a plan to put it there, but it was never an
Oh, all
option.
right. Well, you know,
The other
Facebook-
interesting thing about the Save Mill Pond group is that if you look at every post that I've seen going back to like 2014, it's all about the pond. You know, every photograph, everything is about the pond.
Okay,
so
you know, I
I-
remember all the different things, so. It's hard to keep track of Facebook. All right, Garrett,
Thank you, John. Once we narrow down, the figures for if we put it by the playground, if we rescale it, put it in the existing position, put it by the tennis courts. I think the elephant in the room is the price. Where's this money coming from? And it's obviously got to go to the voters of the town for, to spend the money. But can somebody break that down?
Do you want me to, John?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't even balance my own checkbook bills.
Great question, Garrett. So I think that's why this surfaced again, right? 2 years ago, we read the tea leaves. Tea leaves were, there was no appetite for it. However, sometimes the stars and the moons and everything lines up quite nicely. And in this particular case, Representative Gary Turco, when we were singing the 12 Days of Christmas, came up to me at the Night of Lights and said, hey, we want to give Newington some money and heard you had a project and blah, blah, blah. Well, talking to, the acting town manager and then the different board members and everything else, there started to become an excitement again. And they were talking about, instead of small money, I said, well, how about 500,000 for field turf at Clem Lemire? He says, no, we're thinking something big. I go, like what? He goes, how about the pool? I said, wow, geez. I go, that's like $10 million. He goes, well, if the town's behind it halfway, we'll go after, and he got Ferrara and Senator Lesser to 100% commit to it, to try to go after $5 million of state bonding money. So when that happened, then Keith Chapman was the town manager, and Keith and I talked, and he saw the pools in what shape they were in and knew it was a problem and knew we had to do something. So he was hoping to put together monies from either the sale of on Cedar Street. I forget what that property's called, that the town owns, and then they were selling it for like $1.5 million or something. Mayor, do you know what that was called?
I think you're probably referring to National Welding.
National Welding. Yeah, National Welding. And then he talked about the $4 million of ARPA money, and there's nothing in writing to
Okay,
answer
I'll get it together.
Rose Lyons's thing. Nothing in writing. It was just talk about how we could put together $9 million and maybe only have to raise 1.6 million. And that was kind of where everything went. So the session ends in June. So time became of the essence. And that's why we all moved quickly to say, hey, Newington has an opportunity to grab $9 million. In my 44 years of doing this, I never saw a federal government or state government pay 90 cents on the dollar. If Newington gets away, and no matter what priorities you have, if you have to do your roof of your house or your driveway, and one's 10,000, one's 5,000, you change your priorities if someone's giving you $99 million for free. So that's kind of where we came up with. As far as referendum go, I'm under the impression, and I'm not a lawyer, and I know the charter got changed, but I'm not under the impression that you have to go to referendum, because you would be using state and federal money if this all came to fruition. And again, this is a long shot. There's no guarantee on any of this. But if you got the 1.6 million, and even if that happened, you could do it over 2 years in CIP under the budget process, and the town folks can all vote based on the budget like we do now. So that's my answer to money, but the mayor and John might have different views.
Thank you.
Mary Beth?
Yeah, I just wanted to, well, in terms of the funding piece, the federal funds that Bill is referring to are the ARPA funds. And I can't say that all 4 million would be available for this project. So that's a bit of a concern as we're looking at overall town needs, you know, to put all $4 million into the pool project. I don't know if there's an appetite for that at the council, but I can say that it hasn't been voted on in the past. There's been a lot of speculation that it was a done deal and automatic, that the 4 million were already allocated for the pool project, and that is just not the case. And, you know, we've searched high and low for emails or anything regarding it just to see if there was an intent there. Haven't found it. I don't doubt that there were conversations, because I was in a few with Mr. Chapman where he mentioned like a whole bunch of options, right? We talked about a whole slew full of possibilities. Unfortunately, that money, I don't know where that's going to land in the end in terms of the ARPA funds. But my question was really about when we were talking earlier about the pricing, kind of looking at the cost of things. If we could also, when we're looking at pricing, talk about the cost of the pool versus the pool with amenities. So just kind of breaking up or breaking out some of the things that are incorporated into the project. So I know there's the, you know, splash pad, the climbing wall, the pool, and just kind of looking at the cost of each of those items. Because if we get into a situation where there is funding available, maybe we could fund 1 or 2 things, but maybe not all 4 things, that kind of thing. So that kind of breakdown would be helpful for us as well.
You have that already, Mayor. It's all line item by line item.
Oh, I'll look
but-
through it again. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Like the diving board, just to give ideas, I think the diving board was $35,000. So, you know,
Okay.
the slide was 125, the rock wall was off the top of my head, 75, something like that. So, you know, yes, the Cadillac, the Yugo and all that. I mean, you could cut those things out, but then you have a no fun zone, and the amount of money that those 3 things cost just add to fun for middle school and high school kids. And, but you could cut them out. I get it. No problem. But it's not going to make a big difference on a $10 million project.
Okay. And Bill, are those costs in the original plan? Where am I looking for those?
Yeah, they're
In
in
what
the
year?
executive summary of the,
In which year? Because there were a few different ones.
Just
Well, the
recently, we
late-
updated it.
yeah, the latest revision to the master plan was May of 21.
Okay.
And there was a follow-up document that just escalated those numbers to, I want to say 2023 or 24.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask, because I know the escalation in cost is crazy. Thank you.
And then getting back to Greg's question, the key thing about the ARPA money also is that I think it's is it December of 2024, you have to have a project in agreement, and then by January of 2026 you have to spend all the money or you lose it. So again, there's all kinds of timeframes that are around. Now, if the town doesn't want to do it, that's the town's decision. No question about it. We're just telling you that there's 2 pools that are in disrepair. They're failing miserably, and it's just a matter of time. Who knows how long? It's a fortune telling thing, but we thought it was important to bring to you a potential solution. And, you know, we tried to address all the issues. You can't check all the boxes for sure. You're never going to, in any project, the town hall, community center, Anna Reynolds, security at John Wallace, whatever, you're not going to make everyone happy. No question about it. But we would not be doing our due diligence if we didn't bring this back up again because of the potential funding. If the town can save 9 million, I'd say, why not do it? But if not, it's okay. It's not Bill's pool. I want to clarify everybody on that. I don't swim there, so it's no worries.
All right, John?
Yeah, this is for the architect. Garrett piqued my interest with bringing up the tennis courts again. And at first I thought it was a good idea, but thinking about it, I believe that trunk sewer might actually go right through the middle of those tennis courts. So that would pretty much preclude that idea. Do you have the map of that? Do you know where it goes beyond where you had it indicated. I'm pretty sure it goes down Brookdale and actually cut, yeah.
It's, well, there's some branch lines here. I think the line you're talking about comes down Browning, doesn't it?
No, Brookdale, from the Polish home there, from Wilson Avenue.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Let me get the broader map.
I'm almost certain of that because I had a customer that had a backup in their basement from that, so. And then I followed the maps and I believe it may cross right over the, it may cross right through the tennis court, which would then preclude that.
Looks like, oh, that's the sanitary. I'm not sure it's on this survey.
Yeah, it is the sanitary we're talking about. It's the trunk sewer for Newington.
Yeah, that trunk sewer runs at, I don't know, it's hard to, actually, let me go back to,
I know it's parallel, when I.
it's
did
this
the-
red line here.
Yeah, in the park, it's the red line, but I believe that see where your red line ends? I believe it actually turns like almost a 90-degree bend and then another 90-degree bend up that Brookdale Road.
Yeah, I think, there's
So
a line.
I'm just saying that I like the idea, but if that were the case, then that would totally preclude that plan. You could
Right.
put a tennis court on top of a sewer, but you can't put a pool or a building, obviously.
Yeah, it's right here. I'm seeing
Yeah.
it now.
Yep, that's what I thought. So I kind of like that idea because it seemed like it would be the most tucked out of the way. Then my next question was going to be if it would even fit in there, but I guess that's a moot point right now.
Yeah, we did lay it out in there. We can get it to fit.
Even with the sewer there?
No, that was before we knew about that
Oh,
sewer.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I'm saying.
Once
So,
it's, yeah,
so this is not an option anymore.
no.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think the two viable options are the playground site and the Garfield site. And then we'll look at the existing location far enough to know whether we should look any farther.
And
And I-
if I
John,
do-
John, are you
if I-
still on, John Bashan, are you still on the Wetlands Commission?
Yes,
What do you think, what's your general thinking on that? Would they allow it?
I can't speak for them. In my opinion, Mill Pond unfortunately is the stormwater transfer body of water. Basically, all the stormwater from town, everything that flows in there is stormwater and from our roads and catch basins and everything else. So, but I definitely don't want to speak for them. My opinion, it wouldn't be that big of an impact, but again, I can't speak for anyone else.
Hmm.
Because the
Okay.
pool's already there now, as long as
Yeah,
we're not
Mike, are we,
backwashing into the pond or anything.
yeah, Mike, would that be in the 100-year or 500-year floodplain?
In the existing location, no,
Yeah.
because the grade is steep, once you get beyond the fence line, most of those are down in the hole.
Okay.
So you really only have the upland review area to contend with.
Okay.
The bigger issue is just physically squeezing it in there between the sewer right away and the wetland line, and then how much of the upland review area they'll allow you to build in.
Yeah, I remember.
Typically, if there's 100 foot, the first 50 feet, most towns are, as long as you don't do anything crazy, the first 50 feet, they'll let you work in. The second 50 feet, they look at a lot more closely.
Yeah.
But
I know
don't
the MDC was very, very strict with us in regards to the exercise equipment with that big trunk. We couldn't put any asphalt over it. We had to put paver bricks and stuff and then dig it up if we had to. Yeah.
Yeah, MDC's rules are pretty well defined.
Yeah. Yeah. Then there's no wiggle room.
No.
If I could just add one more thing, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And to Mike, if you do kind of lay out something next to that playground over there,
Mhm.
just a suggestion, if it wouldn't be as broad as it is on the Garfield, that plan, something more rectangular. I don't know how that, if that works at all for you or Bill, but it just seems like it would be more practical to fit in that space instead of sprawling outwards to be longer, let's say.
Right. Yeah, it'll absolutely have to be a different design.
Yeah. And I would, Mike, I would have to take out the preschool area because the kids can't walk from the gym and see a body of water without it being fenced in. So I would leave what we have now as the preschool playground for them.
Yeah, up here.
Yep.
Yeah. And, it might be that the service road changes and maybe the splash pad is on the other side of the sewer manhole or sewer main. So we'll look at some options.
Yeah. I know
and-
four neighbors that touch the park they're not going to be happy. That's for sure.
No, we're not going to make I think you said it, Bill. We're not going to make everybody happy.
We're not going to check all the boxes.
No. Mayor Beth.
Bill, I know you said this isn't your pool and that kind of thing, but I just want to make it clear, this isn't my project either. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands the concerns that are brought forward, that we're hearing on our end. So I'm not trying to be obstructionist. I see a huge need to address our pools, both Churchill and here, in some way, shape, or form. And we need to figure out what that is, whether it's, putting all our eggs in one basket in terms of one pool and switching the other park, whichever one, to a splash pad and something else. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we are invested at the council level. We've had these discussions on finding a solution here. But I do keep hearing at several meetings now, and even tonight, about the safety risks. And, people have even said, oh, it could cave in, it could be detrimental. And Bill, you just made a comment earlier about that. So how are we monitoring this pool? Have we had our risk management folks come out and look at it to say, should we even have it open at this point if it's such a risk? If there's I'm concerned. If you keep saying to me that these are that we're at risk here, do we need to have our folks from Kerma come out and take a look and make sure that we're safe to have these pools open for the season?
Sure. Great idea.
I mean, I'm not trying, I want to make sure I'm not going to sleep. And I think you said the same thing previously. We're not going to sleep well if we know that there's a risk here. And if that's something we should do, then I don't want to have anyone at risk.
100%. We're on the same page. Public safety is critical.
Okay. I can certainly talk to the town manager or bring it up to the council.
Mayor,
Yes.
Jay Batalico.
Hang on, Jay. Phil, hang on, Jay. Phil was ahead of you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Phil.
First, Mayor, thank you for attending this call. I appreciate it because, I'd rather head this stuff off now than do all the work and get to the town council meeting and have it, everybody has to be on the same page. So I agree with that. Question I have for anyone, Bill, Mike, Mayor, has any other town used the ARP funds for a purpose such as this, a pool or something in a sizable, where they dedicated, millions of dollars towards a project like that? I just want to make sure that those funds are feasible. And then my last comment is my son, he did the preschool last year in the summertime, and the biggest complaint he had was that preschool play area. So I'd like to see an improvement on that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Jay?
Okay, thank you. Beth, you remember when I was on the council, I had the job of checking out Churchill Park where we were losing 2 to 3 gallons of water, over 3,000 gallons of water a week. And I asked Mike about taking a look at Mill Pond and taking a look at that concrete. And you're talking a pretty big job and money to really check out to see how that concrete on Mill Pond is caving in or not. So that's all I can tell you.
Okay.
I think, Mike Fortuna, I think at our last board meeting, I don't want to quote you exactly, and maybe you remember what you said, but it was something to the fact that whatever concrete you see from inside the pool, the dirt side of the concrete is going to be a lot worse. And then I think Jay asked you, what year, how long do we have for the concrete, not the walls to collapse? And I think you said you weren't a fortune teller, but when concrete goes, it's a catastrophe. Is that a pretty good summary?
Yeah. So the deterioration of these walls is definitely happening from the backside. The risk of a collapse is much lower when the pool is full of water because the pressures are equalized. It's like they tell you when your car goes in the water, wait till the car fills up. It's equalized, so there's not as much pressure on it. That said, there's been so many leaks for so many years that as that water goes through the concrete into the soils, that you've got the risk of soil washout and voids, and we don't know where those are. So short of scanning the entire area and doing some test pits or cores, you know, I couldn't hazard a guess whether that thing's got a year or 5 years. What I can tell you is the concrete's not repairable. It's just, there's just too much of it that's damaged. So, you know, like Bill said, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you that when it's going to completely fail. I will tell you it is currently in failure mode. You've got cracks, spalls, hollow areas, leaks, pipes that have been leaking and probably washing out soil here and there. So there's just a lot going on there that, you know, it's 60 years old in a harsh environment, you know, a harsh climate, a harsh, you know, chemical load, groundwater, hydrostatic pressure, all of this has been weighing on that pool for 60 years. So kudos to whoever designed it in the first place, because you got 60 years out of it. But, you know, these structures weren't designed to last 100 years.
And for over the 14 years, we've had, I think, 3 engineering companies tell us they were in failure and that we should replace them, both Churchill and Mill. So that's no secret, not just Mike Fortuna, it's 3 other companies saying it. And then lastly, even if it was good for 2 more years or 3 more years, the concrete, the pieces of the filtration system is failing miserably. And as you remember, we had to close Mill Pond for 3 days. We found a company in Texas that had a used part of this old pool, and we bought it from them and they overnight shipped it. So even if the concrete stays 1, 2, or 3 years, we would just close the pools when the filtration system goes. As you know, at Churchill, we replaced the 14-inch drain pipe 14 feet deep, and that was guaranteed for a year, and that was 3 years ago. So we put a sock inside it like the MDC does to pipes, but there was no guarantee on that. And we also spent $33,000 on jacking the bathhouse up at Churchill up in the air because the chlorine ate the lolly columns out. So it's failing everywhere. It's not, this isn't just like one thing. It's miserably awful. One time, that guy, the facilities guy, Dave somebody, I forgot whatever his name was, the first year here, he fixed 30, he had a company come in and fix 38 holes in the piping under the decking of Churchill Park one spring. So, I mean, it's failing all over the place. So it's not going to be a surprise to any of us to close those at any time.
Yeah, and not to pile on, but even if everything was completely watertight, the pipe sizes are too small, and when you're running out of health department compliance due to the water velocities. So, you know, back when this pool was built, the regulations didn't exist. They were created in the 70s. But if there was any notion of trying to renovate this place, all the piping below the pool is too small. And so,
and then in 1990, the ADA came into effect. We don't meet any of the not any, most of the ADA things we don't meet at any bathhouse there or entrance. We need 2 entrances to each side of the pool for people with disabilities. We don't have that. And on that fictitious flyer that went around, I did call Rob Hillman yesterday and today, and to build a community center at Churchill Park on the transfer station in the, as we call the dump, we'd have to get permission from DEP. They gave us a ton of money to build the transfer station. We'd have to put a transfer station somewhere else, and there's, to my knowledge and Rob's knowledge, no other place in Newington to put another dump or transfer station. So that seemed like a good idea on paper, maybe to some people, but not to me.
All right, Phil, you had your hand up again, or is it still up for before?
Yeah, I had two questions. One of them I asked earlier. The first one is the ARPA money, the federal money. Has that been used, recently on any projects in any other municipal, any other towns? So that we can have confidence that it could be used towards this, some sort of similar project. Mike, maybe Bill, maybe Mayor, maybe Second question, with regards to the money that's been designated for this in town, and I know, I believe Rose Lyons asked about it in the town council meeting a while back. If this money isn't for the pool, then what other projects? I think the mayor alluded there might be some other projects. I'd like to know what those other projects are for this set aside money.
I can tell you that I believe ARPA funds can be used for a number of different types of projects, and I would guess that a pool could be one of them. I can't speak to what other towns have done. I don't have that data in front of me. I could certainly request from our finance director to find that out if that's something that you really wanted to find out, I guess. And in terms of other projects, I can't speak in any specificity. I mean, I know that in town we have drainage needs, we have dredging needs, we have sidewalk needs. There's lots of needs in town. When we look at our infrastructure, and we've been trying to hit a lot of that. Just in the past few years, we bonded out for Anna Reynolds, we bonded out for Town Hall. We're really trying to hit a lot of projects. So that $4 million could be used to address any number of issues. I can't even speculate because it has not been earmarked yet. And I could check with the finance director to see if there's anything that is currently earmarked, but that has not been brought forward to us for approval yet.
Okay, because what I'm trying to figure out is and I think Garrett might have mentioned it, like, how do we pay for this? And I'm trying to figure out the feasibility of each component of this funding.
Yeah.
And part of it is whether or not it can be used for something such as this. And that I don't need you to ask other towns, but I was hoping there was an easy answer there, saying, for example, yeah, New Britain just built this, or South Windsor built this.
There was a formal interpretation requested and received from the feds in the nascent stages of this, that park projects were part of the allowable.
I can tell you that
funds.
New Britain is using money at Osgood Park currently, $20 or $30 million. I do believe, my knowledge through Janet Murphy states something like this: anything under $10 million, there's been a new ruling from the federal government for infrastructure projects such as these. It can be used, and there's no audits for any town and for anything under $10 million. So the answer is yes, it can be used for a pool, but it can be used for anything, pretty much. So that's my answer there. And there's on my CRPA listserv, there's tons of projects being initiated right now, from softball fields and baseball fields and new community centers and new pools.
Thank you.
You're muted, John.
Thank God I wasn't swearing then. I said, I think we beat this horse to death a couple of times now. So, the next thing on the agenda would be potential action to move it to the town council. But I think we have some questions that we need answered before we can take action on that. Potentially the pricing for the engineering to put it in the other locations. So I'd like to table that and get another meeting scheduled for maybe, if I can survive budget season, within the next week, 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks, right? Give everybody a chance to do the work that they need to do, right? So I don't know if that's okay for everybody. I don't know if I got to take a vote on it.
Is that going to give Mike the time to do what he has to do?
Well, that's what I'm asking, Mike. How much time do you think you need to put together the information we requested?
We did a lot of the analysis as part of the master plan, so I think we've got we've got enough data. I just need to talk to the right people, our engineers. So I think 2 weeks we can get you, a ballpark of the premium to put it in that location. We can certainly, sketch out a layout in that time frame. So, it'll be an order of magnitude,
Right, okay.
but won't be fully engineered certainly.
Oh, and well, like you said, it's just a concept at this point in time anyways, right?
Right.
All right, so,
Is your thoughts to keep the handicap accessible playground now?
yes.
It is. Leave it there.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't want to open that ordinance nest, Bill.
No, I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah,
just
no,
so you know.
no, absolutely not touching the playground.
So go around, start in front of it.
Yeah, or in back of it, depends how you're looking at it, right?
Yeah, yep.
Right, so, all right, Mike, you had your hand up? You're on mute. There you go.
After we saw your letter and a rare reminder, I called Keith Chapman and I asked him what the conversation was between Bill and Janet. And ARPA funds were never mentioned, but he did say that he could put $1 to $2 million every year into a pool fund, and it would take a few years so you'd get the money, because he definitely didn't want to bond the money out. And at this point, we have other projects too. We're looking at the highway department, the library, and that's really important. Your pool's great, but why don't you just move everything over to Churchill? And you can, if you want to, and put a splash pad, because you have more little kids over here at Mill Pond, and do something really big over at Churchill. And you could do that. I'd hate to see you ruin the look of Mill Pond. It attracts so many people walking. You could put a path all the way around the field. You could leave that baseball field there. But we have to look at the other stuff in town too that's been waiting just as long as you. And you could keep Mill Pond open while you're redoing Churchill, and change your plan. Things change, and we sort of have to roll with the punches sometimes to get to where we want to go. So, Bill, I hope you look at this again. Where the existing pool is, there's a whole bunch of different ways. There's a lot more technology than there was 60 years ago. And I was involved in that type of work, and we could do a whole bunch of new things there. So fingers crossed, we saved the town a lot of money. And thank you, Bill.
All right, thanks, Mike. So, and Beth, you're gonna have to help me here on this. There's it says potential action to move recommendation to town council. Do I need to take a vote on that, or I just say we should table it?
If it's on your agenda as a potential to do, you have to at least determine if you're going to do it or not. And if you are, I would vote on it. But if you're deciding that you don't need to take action this evening because you're going to wait for information, then you don't need to take action on that.
Okay, well, I think we're all in agreement, or most of us are in agreement, that we need to, hear the other options and the costs. So we're not going to take action on that tonight. We'll schedule a meeting. I'll work with Heather, not Heather, good Lord.
Lauren.
Too many meetings. If I start talking about budget numbers, I'm on the wrong meeting. So I'll talk to Lauren and we'll get something scheduled for, I know Wednesday night seems to be the night where there's the least amount of meetings. And we'll get that done. So there's I think we did have public comment in the beginning, but I said we would have public comment again after we discussed it. So let me jump over to that window. Bernadette had your hand up.
I did. Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for, bringing this up again. The pools are in such disrepair. This is a necessity that it gets done and that we don't put it off. Of course, we want to take our time and make the right decisions, but there's been a lot of work done already. I've listened very carefully to everything that was discussed tonight. And I think the location on Garfield Street does make the most sense. It sort of turns that whole area into a compound. The Parks and Rec compounds, the pool makes sense there. As someone who cares very much about open space, I actually like the idea of having the open space in the middle of the park where you can really see the pond there. You know, I think it will be one, you know, it will have more flow as open space all in the middle there. I am 100% against having the same footprint for the pool. After listening to everything tonight, it does not make sense. And I think it would be best to have the view of the pond. I'd be interested in, you know, hearing about next to the playground, but it seems to make sense to me over on Garfield Street. As far as the parking goes, I agree with Mr. Knowlton when he mentioned, you know, trying to keep the parking, if we can get as much parking over across the street there in the municipal, really maximize that parking, and if at all possible, you know, get any more parking down by the buses, that would be the best way to do it, I think. And again, I just want to say thank you for, this really needs to be prioritized. I know there's a lot of things that need to be done, but this has gone on too long. I mean, the pools are about to cave in. You know, I mean, I know they're not that bad, but they're in such disrepair. We've got to prioritize them now, especially having the kind of financial situation that we have. You know, it would be good to maximize the bang for our buck with this. So I think that's all I have to say. And thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. We have another caller on the line whose phone ends in 070. And she just muted herself.
Unmute, Rose.
I thought they said I was unmuted before, but let's try it again. Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I've been listening to this, and I think I asked in the beginning, and maybe I missed it, and I'm not watching. I can't have a visual. So are there any changes to the previous presentation to the town council? And if so, what are they? And what is the cost as compared to what was presented? I know I read in the minutes from the Parks and Rec, it went from 6 to 7 million to 10.6 million. Is that correct?
I think that's a question for you. Well, we'll have to, we will comment on public participation after everybody's done.
Okay. All right. And is what's being presented to the town council or proposed to be presented, is it in 2 phases, or is this the entire project for the park? And just going to make some observations here. Having sat through the town hall reno for 4 years with 4 different committees, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what went wrong here. And believe me, I think the pools have to be replaced. I've been listening for 10 years at CIP meetings how they're going to be closed down because they're falling apart. And again, we just Band-Aid things in this town. But going back to my original question and my concern is that I've been listening to it at CIP meetings. I heard the meeting and watched the presentation in August of 2021. The mayor, as I stated last night, asked you, John, to bring their concerns back to the committee. As far as I knew, the committee never met again. And looking at Parks and Recreation minutes, it seems that there were 3 members of this building committee that didn't want to be involved anymore because they said it was a waste of their time. And if in fact that's true, I believe it should have been brought back to the town council. They should have resigned and you should have started all over again. 18 months later and still not having a shovel-ready project, which is what I think the mayor's intent was, to get something ready so that if money came along like it did just now, we're not in the situation, well, here it's March, almost April, and the legislators need answers by May or June, whatever the case may be. I just don't understand either. Reading in the minutes, Councilor Mankey was asked whether the pool committee was been disbanded, and as far as I guess they knew, it wasn't, but he also said, and maybe this is wrong in the minutes, as were the funding of the ARRA as opposed to ARPA funds. He said the municipal or the permanent municipal building committee would oversee this project. As far as the parking, I agree with the mayor. Like I've often heard said about water, water follows the path of least resistance. And people are going to follow the path of least resistance. They're not going to be walking from down by the down by the town hall parking. They're not going to be walking from over where the parking is now. That's just my opinion from what I've seen. As for the playground or the pool and stuff at Churchill Park, I did make a statement about the $19 million, and I think I was misunderstood or I misspoke, because the $19 million was brought up about Churchill in front of the CIP committee before there ever was a building committee, and that's not Bill's fault. I think he was told that this is what he had to do. But once again, it went by the wayside, and nothing got done, just like nothing's gotten done on this for the last 18 months. But what I do have the biggest problem with, and correct me if I'm wrong here, this ARPA money, it's something that the town manager looks at the projects in town, makes recommendations as to what the monies can be spent on. And we got $8 million. And I think we've either allocated or spent half of that. And the bonding from the state of Connecticut, $5 million, this is a question. If we get the money, how or when will we know that we got the money? And in reading the minutes of the Parks and Rec meetings, it was noted that it could go to the bonding commission if the town was willing to put up half the money. Well, half of $5 million is $2.5 million in my books. And I just have a problem with $8 million, $4 million for the town of Newington to do what they want to do with, and $4 million for Parks and Rec. It just seems like a lot of money to go to one department. And are there other projects that need to get done? Well, I could think of our town website and some things that could be done with technology in the town. And then there's my pet project of the South Branch of the Park River. Millbrook, Piper Brook have to be dredged. There's a stalemate as to who's going to do it. I'd like to see some of that money put towards that. Don't get me wrong. I think that the pools, like I said, need to be taken care of, but there's going to be a lot of people along those brooks that are going to be very unhappy when the feds come in and say this is decertified as a flood zone, and you're going to have to start paying flood insurance. And we all know what Newington's like as far as the waters and stuff. I guess that's probably about it, except for, once again, I'll go back to my father and his sayings, and I'm saying this to the Parks and Rec Department. Did you have the right to do it, to bring all this out to the public and do what had to be done? And did you do it in the right way? Yes, you had the right to bring it out, because I think that you were being stonewalled, but I don't know the backstories. But I believe that our departments have to, and the town council have to start communicating with one another so that we don't have this debacle again. I mean, 18 months, it's unacceptable. Those are just my feelings. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. Ms. Francolino, you have your hand up? Eileen, you there?
Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to call in and say thank you for having this meeting. And as I said before, I hope this information is brought forth to the public. I think this whole plan has grown quite the fishtail over Facebook, and people don't really know the truth and the facts about what's being proposed and what's not being proposed, and that it's not a Taj Mahal, it's a pool. And I would appreciate it if you guys could work towards getting the facts out so people and the council will have a good idea of where we're coming from. Thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you, Eileen. All right, I don't see anybody else's hand up. I don't see, anybody on the committee have anything to bring forward. Eileen, did your hand go back up or you just didn't go down? Oh, there we go. Who has your hand up?
John, if I may, I'd just like to, end by thanking Mike Fortuna and TLB Architects so much out of the generosity of their hearts and their commitment to the town of Newington. They've been doing all this work for free, so we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Don, you had your hand up?
Yeah, John. So let me just lower this thing. Hold on. To Rose's comment that 3 members did not want to continue on the building committee, that's a true statement. It's my understanding at the council meeting that the pool was turned down at that point. I'm going to say for money. I'm not speaking authoritatively, but I believe that's what it was. And the recommendation was to spend $1.5 million per pool on renovations. And the committee members I'll speak for myself. I didn't see any need for a building committee to do renovation. Building committee was formed to build a new pool and a new bathhouse, not make $1.5 million of repairs. So I still feel that way. If the money is available, that's why we got back interested again. We were under the impression that there could be up to $9 million available for this project. But that's not the case. I'm sure the project is going to go no place. I'm sure of it. But that's my opinion on why I made that statement, and I still stand by it.
Okay, Don, thank you. All right, is there anybody else? We probably about an hour ago, we lost Lauren. She lost internet at her house. So so she can watch the video. So we have no more public comments. Any more committee comments?
This is Phil. I just want to say if we can't get any kind of resolution, I think, we can't go on a 5-year plan like Councilman Camillo mentioned, just to get a pool build. I hope we can find some sort of more creative funding for that. I certainly don't want to wait 5 years for a splash pad. I've had 5 kids and they haven't seen a splash pad in Newington in 22 years. I don't want to have another just to wait to see if they're going to have a splash pad. So please prevent me from having a kid. I just want to get a splash pad for my current kids. No more in the future. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay,
let's try to get something done here. Seriously, like I know Garrett's a member of the public and I am as well. I think we were just chastised by Rose Lyons for 18 months, but we've been working hard at this. And if this isn't palatable for the town, if it's financing or whatever, then we need to straight talk with each other and find out what is palatable, because we need to get something in the center of town. I have a neighbor that literally, she hasn't worked for Parks and Rec in years, and she told me that her job in the summertime was to go around with her toe and find leaks in the pool. So for me, we got to get this done. It's really starting to get frustrating for even all of us on this committee. Thank you.
All right, Phil, thank you. Rose, did you have your hand back up or I just didn't take it down?
Yes, I had my hand up.
Okay, quickly, please. Oh, she went on mute.
Hello?
You're back.
Okay, Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive, and I'll make this one a lot more briefer than the first one. First of all, Don Woods just said that the town council turned down this proposal and wanted to go with the $1 million fix proposed by Keith Chapman. Can I ask the mayor whether or not that actually happened? Because I must have missed the memo and I must have missed the meeting. And as far as Mr. Knowlton's comments about being chastised for not doing anything for 18 months, I'm not chastising anybody for not doing anything for 18 months. All I remember is at the August 21st of the 2021 meeting, the mayor told John Donahue to get the committee together and go over the concerns of the town council. I've never heard that it was turned down, and I just like confirmation whether or not it was turned down, and then I can understand why 3 members wouldn't be involved. And if it's been going on for 18 months, being worked on by whoever it is, it hasn't been the building committee. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rose. All right, anybody else? Beth, you want to answer that or you want to,
I'm actually pulling up the minutes now just to refresh my memory because it's quite a while ago and we take votes on a lot of things, but I don't believe a vote was taken at that meeting. I do believe there was a lot of discussion as I'm looking at the minutes. And honestly, a lot of the comments are very similar to what were mentioned tonight on both sides of the debate. So in the end, it said that that I thought that I stated to Mr. DeMaio that it was a worthwhile discussion. We had to continue to get a sense of what we all need in order to figure something out to get the pool done. And that's a matter of coming to common ground on what we can do and what we can afford. And that we wanted to continue to partner with both of you to figure this out. That's what the minutes state. So I don't believe there was action saying that the town was not in support of the project. I believe that very similarly, there were some discrepancies or questions that still had to be answered at that time. And if the perception was otherwise, then, I'm sorry for that, but the minutes are pretty clear if you look back at them.
all right. Awesome. So we will, for lack of a better term, I can't bring up the slide for adjournment. So, and I don't know if I even have to request a vote to adjourn in a special meeting.
Yeah, you do.
Okay,
I move to adjourn.
second. Oh, I can't second, sorry.
Good.
Okay. First by Phil, second by Don. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I will get a meeting scheduled for a couple weeks from now, probably on a Wednesday night.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take
Mayor,
care.
Everyone,
Mayor, are you still there?
I am, Bill.
Yeah.
Hang
I
on,
just
Bill.
I want to circle back with you in regards to the grand opening of Beechwood, if you were going to assign someone.
Yes, I actually got an email back from Deputy Mayor Gail
Guys,
Draco.
we are.
Thank you. I'm usually calling you out on that, John. I got an email last night from Deputy Mayor Draco saying she can cover it for me.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
And I'll try to get, most of the other counselors hopefully will be there as well, but she'll be the one that would be the point person.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And have a
Thank you.
good vacation.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Talk to